It's a very interesting topic, and I'd like to begin by starting with a reading from Whispers from Eternity. Master writes, through long, winding pathways of self-doubt, fording mighty rivers that separated thee from me, trudging over endless wastes of barren lives, tossing dangerously on the rapids of many ambitions, arduously climbing steep mountain trails of desire and carefully extricating myself from whirlpools of alternating sadness and hilarity. At last I have reached my journey's end. I look upon all those past travails with joy. Every struggle, every past agony has produced a flowing spring of joyous, grateful tears. In the sacred waters of those tears, I baptize myself daily with deep love for thee. This topic of, I'm going to bring up something here. I want to read a poem at the end, and I'm going to bring this up. This topic of did God create the universe? Did God become the universe? When we think about it, we think these are philosophical questions that have been debated by philosophers. It's been debated by theologians throughout the ages. I mean, these are things that I guess are even into the future. But we might ask ourselves, and Swami raises this question, what meaning does this have for us? I mean, philosophers and theologians, I mean, it seems such an obscure topic that does it have any reference to my life in any way? Anyway, and thinking about this, it actually does, because there's an important distinction between these 2 points of view. On the one hand, it's a very traditional, particularly in the Western theological tradition, that God is separate from his creation. It's as if God is in his workshop. He made this wonderful creation that we find ourselves in, sometimes wonderful at least. And it's as if he created, he's there somewhere in his workshop, far away, some other place. But if we think about that, how could that possibly be? There is no other place. This world is this world. Of course, God exists beyond creation as well, but the implication of that way of looking at life, of this universe, is that God is somewhere far away. He's outside, and here we are, very separated from him. And that's a very dualistic way of looking at life, and it has subtle implications as we think of ourselves in that way. And it emphasizes that sense that we're different or separated in some fashion. But if you look at what I obviously prefer, and which I think is the more truthful, closer to the truth, is that God is within creation. God manifested this world from his own divine consciousness. And that means, the implication of that means is that God is in this creation. This is a divine reality in which we exist. That divinity exists in the rocks and in the plants, the animals, and especially that divinity exists within us. God is within us, right here, not out there. And if God is within you, as it's also said in the scriptures as well, God is within you, it means that we are, in essence, he's within every atom of our very being. And that potential is there for us. It really means that we don't need to go to some other place to know God. You could say we go to some other state of consciousness maybe, but physically we're here. It's not far away. It's right here. And Master used to say, people pray and cry to God, come to me, God, come to me, God. And he would say, don't you realize you have him right now, wherever you are? Whether you realize that right now is, of course, the question. But we don't have to go elsewhere. We don't have to travel here, travel there. God is with us right now. And it goes back to that saying of Sister Gyanamata when she said, if you cannot find God where you are right now, where do you expect to find him? He's everywhere, but he's right here within us. And you could say he's within our heart. And we have it, but we don't realize it. You could say God is hiding in plain sight, but just the knowledge or the belief, if not the realization, that God is with us means that that potential is ours. God is our own highest potential. And that's what Swamiji, of course, when he met that atheist, so-called atheist, I would say, from Australia, and Swami would put on these accents. He was very good at mimicking accents from around the world. And after he'd given a lecture, the fellow in the audience in Australia, Sydney, I think, came up and says, "Well, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. What do you have to say to me?" And Swami says, "Well, think of God as your own highest potential." And the man paused on that, and I think I asked you to pause on that. What is your highest potential? You see, the man thought about that, and he said, "That works for me." And and it's true. People think that they're atheists, and because they have this conception of God elsewhere, outside of ourselves somewhere. But it's that own highest potential of we ourselves could be. The great ones, and this Swami used to say this all the time, they said they came not to show us humanity. The avatars don't come to show humanity how great they were, but they came to show us our own divine potential. And so and so when we think in these two worldviews, theological views, is God, did he become this world, or did he create this world? And he became this world. He didn't actually becoming, probably is not even the right word either, because there's no becoming implies a sense of time. He is. The whole process of manifestation from cosmic gases to swirling fiery planets to this world that we live in. It's been a process. I like to think of it as a process of unfoldment. It's an unfoldment and that's the whole process of evolution itself here on this planet, but I think cosmically, you might say also, it's an unfoldment from you might say stars and gases ultimately to divine consciousness, of which we're a part of. And he's hiding, as I say, in plain sight. But to realize that's our you might say our challenge, to be able to realize that this potential, and what do we do about? And this question that comes to all of us, I think at one point, if a person's on the spiritual path, takes up meditation and begins to think about things, is inevitably we come to this question of, why am I here? And what's the meaning? What's the purpose of all that? But if we realize that there is a potential to reach our highest potential, in a sense, that worldview itself, I might not know what that potential is, but it gives a sense of purpose, and it gives a sense of meaning to our very existence. The sense that we have something higher to aspire to. And we eventually come to realize that this has been a great gift. This gift that we have been created, and that we have a divine potential ultimately to live up to and to aspire to. And this potential is this very life that we've all been given, which is really, you look at the world around you and the rocks and the trees, they haven't been given this same, they have the potential, you could say, in the evolutionary sense, but right now they haven't reached that point where they can actually aspire consciously, that sense of awareness. And the animals themselves have much less than that. It's only in this human, this human form that we have this awakened potential, that gift that has been given to all of us in humanity. And it comes with the joys and the sorrows of humanity, the pains and suffering, but that potential is there. Even in suffering, we see that when we know that potential, and you could say that suffering is just the absence of that divine potential, but that awareness, that potential there spurs us forward, if for no other reason, simply to get away from that suffering that unfortunately we all have to endure. Now, there's this question. We find ourselves in this dilemma of what are we doing here? Where are we going? And this dawning awakening begins to come to us that there must be something greater here. And this is this awakened consciousness of aspiration that Swami Sri Yukteswar said in his Holy Science. This is something that dawns. It's an inevitable step that every soul must take, does take, because all of us have that potential eventually. It's our destiny, actually, to merge ourselves once more with God. And in that process, that there comes this point when we begin to ask this question of where am I going? What is my purpose in life? God, I've heard that God exists. God is here within everybody. God's within me. But why? Why can't I know this? And that call begins to go out from each individual soul. And that step, I think, is each individual soul, and I think as each one of us at some point has taken this step. When that step is taken, it's a very important one, because you might say it's when we begin to ask the universe that what am I here for? What is the purpose of my life? You could say that's when we really truly become a devotee. And once we start asking that question, you could say it's like there's no really going back, because that awakening consciousness of longing of the heart, as Master was saying in that reading from Whispers, that longing, the tears that begin to well up in that sense of I want something. I don't know what it is, but I want something. When we get to that point, and I think all of us have reached that point, we become a devotee because we're entering into the search. And it's that search, that desire, that must be fulfilled. It's said that all desires, and we say, oh, desires aren't a good thing to have because they create karma, except for that one desire, the desire for God. And this reading, you might say, or this outlook on life, that God is within this creation, it's our divine potential, that God is within ourselves, gives us hope that is what we are eventually moving toward. He's within us, and he's within us right now. And he's as much within us right now as he ever will be. And it's just a matter of ultimately knowing that. Paramahansa Yogananda, this is the path of what Paramahansa Yogananda defined, this path of self-realization. He says it's the knowing in body, mind, and soul that we are one with the omnipresence of God, that we are not merely near it at all times, but that God's omnipresence is our omnipresence, that we are just as much a part of him now as we will ever be. And here was the last part. He said, all we have to do is improve our knowing. Improve our knowing. But why do we feel apart from God? Why does not God, why is there sense of distance? Well, that's our journey. That's what we have to do. And we strive and we strive and we strive, and we finally come to that point, which was illustrated by Master in this story. He said there was a yogi, and he was meditating. He was meditating at the altar. And he was placing flowers of his devotion, he was placing them on the altar one by one, until finally he went into a state of divine ecstasy. He went into a state of ecstasy and realization. And he said, I have all this time, I've been worshiping another's image. He had a murti, I'm sure, there. I've been worshiping others' image, and now I see that I, untouched by this body, am the sustainer of the universe. I bow to myself. And he began putting the flowers on his own head. Now, at first reading, you might think that sounds a bit arrogant of him or egotistical, but it wasn't that at all. He had realized that God wasn't out there. He was out. Yes, God is out there, but God is within ourselves as well. And that difference, that sense of parting, had been transcended. But we simply yet, those of us struggling on this path to come to that realization, we simply yet haven't the capacity to understand that. To be able, you could say, Master said, a fellow came to him, said he wanted God right now, and Master's comment, he wanted to drink the whole ocean, but he could only drink 6 glasses. And he laughed. And in a sense, that's our position. Maybe we can drink 12 glasses of the ocean, but it's infinitesimally small. We have to, you could say, through our daily practices, through our meditation, through our devotion, we expand the capacity to be able to hold that. One of the disciples came to Master, I think it was Dr. Lewis, and he was pestering Master for samadhi. And he said, no, until finally this Dr. Lewis cornered Master. He says, give me samadhi, sir. And Master looked at him very sternly in the eyes in a very stern voice. He says, if I give it to you, could you take it? And Dr. Lewis, he was stunned, and he looked down. He says, no, sir. You see, could we take that divine vision if it was going to come to us? It's not that God wants to withhold that vision from us. We think that it's God's fault. It's not God's fault. God is there for everybody. God is there for us to receive. And as much as we can receive, to all those who received him, gave he the power to become the sons of God. So our ability to receive is what the spiritual path is about. That's what we're doing when we practice yoga, when we practice Kriya Yoga, when we improve our attitudes, we remove those barriers. You could say that is taking up all the space. It's like having a bowl. We want to fill it with divine nectar, but the bowls are really already filled with sand or whatever it might be. We have to empty that bowl out. But one of the ways, of course, is you keep pouring in that nectar into the bowl, and it begins to overflow, and keep pouring nectar in, it overflows. It's like the glass of muddy water. You keep pouring clear water into that glass of muddy water. Slowly, the glass of water becomes clear, and there's no mud left. And so this is what we do on the spiritual path. This is what we do every day when we meditate. We open ourselves up to that divine presence to come in. It's like clear water. We invite that clear water to come in to this body, to come into this mind, to come into this consciousness, to, you could say, overflow, so there's no space left for anything that isn't divine. You see, you don't have to beat on the darkness to get rid of it. Just bring in the light, and the darkness is driven away. keep that in mind. The important thing is keep asking that question. People come, people go. And over the years, all these years I've lived in it with, I worked with Ananda, with Swamiji, and been here. I've seen lots of people. I don't want to put a number on it, but I've seen lots of people come, be very enthusiastic, and where'd they go? They drifted off, and oh, I went back because I really wanted to be a musician, and make my name, or I really wanted endless list of things they wanted to do. I wanted to explore other opportunities, and it's sometimes I feel a little bit sad, particularly if I have this intuitive feeling they've made a wrong move. But on the other hand, I tend to be somewhat philosophical about it. Because the real issue for me is when people go and I hear about them years later, I always ask, are you still a devotee? Are you still a Degurubai? Are you still, practicing? Is master still with you? And oftentimes they'll say yes. And I think, okay, you're okay. You may not have stayed here and you may have other adventures of karma to fill, but if you're still a disciple, what's the important thing. You make that connection with the guru. And then life maybe carries you on the rapids, again, as Master said in that reading. You carry down the rapids, tumbling down the rapids. But if you're hanging on to that quest for truth, I want to know the truth. I want to know. And you've gotten to that point where you've invited the guru into your life to guide you in that. And even though you're going down the rapids, he's got you covered. He's got your hand, and you'll come out okay. So those folks who come and go and they still hang on there, I don't worry too much about them. It's the ones that you might say they give up for this lifetime seeking that truth that's there. And those are the ones that, well, maybe they go back to sleep for a while. And again, in the long run, they have to wake up. They have to wake up and take up this path because there is no other. And that's you could say, the biggest challenge of the devotee is to keep that quest and that desire for God alive, to keep calling him. And there's a poem that I mentioned right at the beginning. I said I wanted to read. This has been put into a very sweet song. I wish I had musical talent here to be able to sing this for you, but it comes from Keep Calling Him is the name of the song. But it was taken from this poem by Master. It's an adaptation of this poem, and I'd like to read that poem to you. It goes like this. Whether he replies or not, keep calling him. Ever calling in the chamber of continuous prayer. Whether he comes or not, you must believe he is ever approaching near to you with every command of your heart's love. Whether he answers or not, you must keep entreating him, even if he makes no reply in the ways that you expect. Ever know he will respond in some subtle way. In the darkness of your deepest prayers, know he is playing hide and seek with you. And in the midst of the dance of life, disease, and death, if you keep calling him, undepressed by his seeming silence, you will receive his answer. So remember this, God is not far away. He's right here. Look at him, and one way to see, maybe you can't see. Well, imagine this, look for him as the light. And in your looking for him in the light of meditation, do that. Look, yes, but do it with love. Summon up as you meditate each day, summon up that love in the heart. Try to feel that love here, feel it there, and then project that feeling into the darkness of space at the spiritual eye and call to God. Come out of the darkness, Mother. Bathe me in thy light. And so did God create this world or did he become it? In the end, I think you could say either one and make a case for it. But I like to say he became it. And he became you, and he became me, and he became all of us. And one day, all of us are destined to walk, and we are destined to walk that path to one day realize that God is the very essence within us, within every atom of our being. That's what the Christ consciousness is. And one day we will realize that and become one with that. So that's, to me, our divine potential. And to me, it's a very, very hopeful message. God bless all of you, and joy to you.